Important updates. I feel swell. I have overslept. I have started the day off by being a bad employee and immunocompromised. That'll put some hair on somebody's chest. You know, for all the times that I was told that things that I should do and eventually did do would put hair on my chest, I have remarkably few hairs on my chest. So somebody somewhere along the way lied to me. And that makes sense. What are we even doing here? Let's go. I have to go now. And as you can tell from my general demeanor and appearance, I am elated. Let's go.
Generations of experience with regard to this animal, and I think for us,
You did something stupid. I am shocked. You locked yourself out of your truck. Is your jockey box unlocked? Oh, I've done it many times. Okay. Do you have any keys available?
intervening negligence of the pursuers. However, the court also noted that
Important updates. I have been conducting an unreal amount of critical business via the old Bluetooth headset here. First with Jimmy, who you heard me talking to earlier. He managed to lock himself out of his truck today, which I understand why he would call me about it, because I've done that several times. But through sheer tyranny of will and good old-fashioned American resourcefulness, he managed to get back into the truck. He did have to borrow a lockout kit from some Russian folks, and that made him nervous for reasons that I didn't quite understand, but I'm sure might be clear to some of you.
Shower is ready. Please proceed to shower board.
This is Valley City, North Dakota. I just fueled and now finishing up my 30-minute break, which is now 52 minutes long because I am really good at this. And for some weird reason, kind of busy on the phone, as I mentioned, moving and shaking things around on the home front. But back to work. Let's keep going. I've arrived to one of my favorite parking spots, Monticello, Minnesota. Also one of my favorite states. Life is a dream. Today I drove 667 miles, and I have 1,337 miles for the pay period so far. Someone on YouTube, whose name I think might be Maria based on the username, I'm not really sure, but some he, she, or they commented on my video and indicated that random facts and useless information was fine, and we could do that. And so they suggested maybe I make it a daily routine instead of like that other guy, that Bob Fleet guy. He does the bottle flip for you all and shouts people out. Maybe from this point forward, what we could do is like you could throw out like just a random subject for me to rattle off about for a little while, or try to connect back to me somehow. That might be fun for me, a little bit mentally stimulating, and it would be fun for me. And if it's not fun for you guys, I might have to change my strategy before, you know, moving on to something that is a little bit more appealing to my audience. if there will be any audience left at the end of what I'm about to try to do. And what I'm trying to do is talk to you about North Dakota, because North Dakota, and this one, for reference, this is my first random fact shout out, and this is for someone that may or may not be named Maria, but left a very good set of ideas for me for future videos, and I plan to follow at least one of them now, about random useless information. North Dakota is a state that I drove through today on I-94 from the west to the east, and there are, I believe, not all the facts I give are necessarily true, but I believe this to be true right now. But when you look it up, you can correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that on I-94 in North Dakota, there is 352 miles of that, and I drove all of them today. And as I was driving through, I thought about a few unrelated things. One of the things I thought about is I was driving through North Dakota, because one of the first things you come to is Theodore Roosevelt National Park and the Badlands out there, and that's cool. And then I thought about Theodore Roosevelt a little bit and his impact on conservation and the national park system and things that I really enjoy, public lands in this country, and that made me feel grateful. And then another thing I thought about was the Super Pumper in Dickinson, or Balefield, actually. North Dakota was another town that I came up to next, and how one time, even though I didn't buy any of it, they charged me for 4 cans of zine pouches. And what a fiasco it was to make that go away. And then I thought about Bismarck, North Dakota, and how that made me think about Johnny Horton and his song Sink the Bismarck, which was one of my favorite songs growing up, and still probably one of my favorite songs. It's really catchy. And that's about World War II and sinking the German battleship the Bismarck. Then as I got a little bit further, I realized there was going to be less things to think about and tied to geographical areas, because the rest of North Dakota is basically just not a lot, frankly. And that might not be true if you're from North Dakota and you have a lot of sentimentality, towards the area that's described as anything in North Dakota that's east of, say, like exit 25. And for that, I apologize. But I did think about how North Dakota shares the state bird. See if I can do this. The state bird with, I think, a few other states. North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Oregon, and Nebraska. So that's 5. But at least those 5 states have the western meadowlark as their state bird. And then I thought about how one time when I was a kid, I was hanging out around this one guy's property, and I was hanging out there with a .22 rifle in my hand, a Henry lever action with a Leopold 3x9 scope on it. And I mean, I absolutely wore that gun out on account of thousands and thousands of cartridges I pushed through that thing, and I cleaned it like twice, maybe. To the point where it no longer works at all. Just absolutely destroyed the action, and I don't regret a minute of it. It was one of the coolest experiences. Just go tromping off into the woods with that thing. But I was on this property, this guy, and this guy, he said to me, he said, "Hey, you see that bird right there?" And I said, "I do." And then I looked at it and I remembered what it looked like. And then he said, "And you hear the noise that it makes?" And I said, "I do." And he was like, "If you can hear one of those and you can find it and you can shoot it on my property, I'll pay you $6. And I was like, getting paid to kill birds with my .22 rifle? Am I in heaven? So I went out and I shot, and the bird he was describing is, I don't know what the statute of limitations on this is, so I probably shouldn't be too specific, but I probably will be needlessly specific. But it was a bird that's often called a flicka or a flicker or a woodpecker, depending on where you're at. I don't know the scientific name for it, but I know one when I hear one, and I know one when I see one, and I can even identify them usually pretty good in flight, because I even know how they move through the air, because like any experienced hunter, once you learn your prey, and I shot several of those things, let me tell you, to the point where this fella one time, he said, "That's enough. There's no longer a bounty for flickers, and they no longer pose a threat to any eaves on my property whatsoever, on account of, I think that you have decimated the entire local population." And I later found out, at the time, I didn't really know much better. Ignorance is no excuse for the law or what have you, but I was like 12, 13 years old at this time probably. And all I knew is he said $6 a flicker, and I said, say less, fam. And I didn't say that then. I didn't even know that term then, but I basically let it be known that I was the man for the job, and I became a, what do you call it, a market hunter, a bounty hunter? I was like Dog the Bounty Hunter, except I had a .22 rifle, and I didn't lecture any of the people that I caught up with or the prey that I caught up with about their life choices. I just killed them. Not people, just flickers, to clarify. Well, one time, I was out there, and I was an excited 12 or 13-year-old kid with a Henry lever action .22 rifle in his hands, and I looked up and I saw a beak that looked familiar in a vague shape of a bird that looked familiar at the top of a juniper tree. And one thing that I learned about flickers real quick is they really like to hang out at the very top of a tree and then shout out, and they make a very distinctive call. It's kind of a cool noise that they make, but you'll know it when you hear it. He wasn't making no noise though, he was just sitting up there. And I took aim and I shot. And then as it was coming down, or maybe after it came down and I was walking up on it at the bottom of the tree, I saw that flash of yellow and my heart sunk because I realized I'd made a critical error. I'd shot a western meadowlark and not a flicker. And I was sad because meadowlarks are wonderful birds. They make an incredibly beautiful song, and they are very aesthetically pleasing birds, and I like watching them a lot. Probably one of my all-time favorite birds. But I cannot look at a flicker or a meadowlark ever again. I don't think that there's ever been a time that I've seen either of those species without thinking about this story that I just told you and feeling a great deal of remorse and shame about killing that meadowlark. Moving on, the state fish of North Dakota is called the northern pike. And I killed a northern pike one time. In fact, I've done it more than one time, but the very first northern pike I killed was at Rose Lake in a state called Idaho. And it was through the ice because it was ice fishing. It was the winter time, and I really like ice fishing. And in Idaho, you can drill 5 holes through the ice, so I did that. I drilled 5 6-inch holes through the ice. The ice was about 3 inches thick, which is probably right on the cusp of where a fella maybe shouldn't be walking out into the middle of the lake and drilling holes in it. But I didn't care because I was after fish, by golly. And I drilled 5 holes through the ice, 6-inch holes with an auger, hand-powered auger. And in Idaho, you're allowed 5 holes. So for me, that's 4 tip-ups. And tip-ups are a sort of semi-primitive device where you have a spool of line that has like kind of a very simple trigger system on it that actuates a spring-loaded flag, so that if any fish hits your line, the flag goes up, and then you know you have a bite, and then you can excitedly run over to that hole, pull the flip up off the hole, grab onto the line, and hope and pray that you feel resistance and you still have the fish. And 85.73.29% of the time, there is no fish. But the thrill of the possibility that there could be keeps you running back every time you see that flag. At least it does if you're me. And when I was out there on Rose Lake, I set up 5 tip-ups with different things, but one of the things that I set it up with was a double-aught treble hook connected to a steel braided leader, and I took a hot dog, just a regular cheapo hot dog from the grocery store, and I threaded it down onto the shank of that double-aught treble hook through the steel leader, so that the steel leader was going up through the hot dog, and then I connected that steel leader to my braided, waxed, ice fishing specific line for the tip up. And I threw that thing down, gave it some slack, let it sink down there a little bit. And then had 4 tip ups out. And then I was at my 5th hole jigging for yellow perch, which I freaking love jigging for yellow perch. And I usually use, I think, a size 8 tungsten jig. Size 8 hook. The little jig head. Like a chartreuse jig head is what I like. And I'll usually put like a mealworm on that hook, or maybe get some night crawlers and then just kind of take my 2 fingers here and pinch off little pieces of night crawler, put it right at the bend of that hook, and then you jig. When you get on a school of them, man, it's fun. because you're getting like a fish almost every single time you put that jig head down there. But one trick that I learned, and now I'm going to share with any of you that like jigging for yellow perch through the ice, if you don't already know it. You get that first yellow perch. This only applies if you're planning on keeping the yellow perch, which hopefully probably you should be, because they're real good eating. Just takes a little bit of time to get them all cleaned up if you get a mess of them. You get that first little yellow perch, you're going to take that size 8 hook and you're going to press it at the corner of that perch's eye, and then you're going to scoop out that eyeball. And let me tell you something right now. It takes a little bit of finesse, but if you get good at it, you can get really good at just scooping out those eyeballs. Nothing catches yellow perch better than yellow perch eyeballs when you're jigging through the ice. So that's what I was busy doing at that 5th hole when I was out there on Rose Lake. And as I was doing that, catching some yellow perch, I saw that flag go up on that tip up. I ran over. I grabbed the line. I felt resistance. I pulled and I pulled, and up comes this big northern pike. And it wasn't big for a northern pike, but it was big to me on account of it was the first one that I'd ever caught. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the first of any species that you ever caught is big, no matter how many times you try to accurately remember your first time catching any game fish. It's always bigger in your mind. And in fact, like Patrick McManus says, I think that first pike that I got has been getting bigger over time because I've been feeding it well in my memory as it swims around in there. So let's just say this thing was like a 63-inch northern pike, okay? It wasn't, but I'm going to say that because it makes me feel better. It was probably like a 24-inch northern pike, maybe. I don't know. Who cares? But it was mine, by golly. I pulled it out and I filleted that thing up. It's some of the best tasting fish I ever had. And ever since then, I made a point of trying to go after northern pike as often as I possibly can, especially through the ice, because ice fishing is the bee's knees. By golly, let me tell you that right now. So I guess what I'm getting at is I have killed the state bird and the state fish of North Dakota, one on accident or by accident, and I will eternally be regretful of that. And then another time on purpose, and it was delicious, and I will do it again as many times as I possibly can. Thank you for your time. Is this what you were looking for as far as useless information? I hope this helps or counts. If you want to be featured by me rambling on a crazy tangent about some specific subject, maybe you should just comment below what subject you want me to ramble on about. Maybe I could do that for 13 minutes on the next video. I think my 10-hour break is almost up now after telling you this story. I should probably go ahead and just get to bed and be done with all this. Thanks for watching. We'll catch up with you.